So we've been studying about Moses and Pharaoh and the Exodus that we're about to see. And I'm going to hook my trailer hitch to Ronnie because it follows right behind. And I'm going to overview a little bit about what has taken place so far up until right now. Mm-hmm. Through all the plagues that Moses has confronted with Pharaoh with to try to convince Pharaoh to let his people go, you had the blood, changing the water to blood upon the Nile. You had a plague of frogs, a plague of lice, flies, livestock pestilence, boils, hail and thunder, locusts, and the one that we're about to do now. With each and every one of these plagues, it represents a deity or a god that the Egyptians followed and prayed to. With the blood, it confronted Happy and Osiris. With the frogs, Happy was part of that as well. She was a frog goddess that they prayed to. And the lice was against the earth god Seb. The flies was a fly god, Yachid. And the livestock and pestilence was cattle god. And there was several. It was Pi, Menevus, Hathor, and Ammon. And the boils had a god of Segment, Serratus, and Imhotep. And the hail and thunder was Nut and Set. And the locust was Serapis. All these gods that they prayed to, not only was God trying to deliver his people, but at the same time he had a double agenda, if you would look at it in the sense of God. He was stripping away each and every one of Egyptian gods from them. Mm-hmm. When we find ourselves in a situation, what do? We turn to God, don't we? We pray because he's our hope, he's our faith, he's our security that we have because he knows he's with us. So each and every time these certain plagues would come up, they would go to that God that pertained. And there was no hope. There was no help. When God spoke, it happened, and when Pharaoh said that he would take care of it, they'd let his people go, then he went back on his word, and Moses would go, and at that time, that plague ceased to exist. So God was showing Pharaoh and showing the Egyptian people that not only am I a God of all, but I'm the God of the earth, the sky, the plants, the animals. When I have my being Moses person to say it, it's going to happen. And no matter what they prayed to or what they put their faith into, it was nothing. So here you have these plagues. You have your water that would be turned to blood. So at the same time, you're thinking, even today, when we have a water break and we have a boil water advisory, a lot of people will say, I'm boiling mine even further because you just don't really trust it.
Right.
Now, how much trust do the people have in their water? How much? Then they turn around and they have boils, and then they turn around and they have locusts, and these people mentally have been broken down. They're half of their lives, their plants, the rye, like Ronnie taught last week. God took the rye and something else, but it consisted of the beer, the food for animals, and the other was flax, which was for linen. So that destroyed that crop. That crop was ready to be harvested, and the hailstorm took it away. But God spared the wheat. He gave that was a little bit of hope for him. So he was having a little bit of mercy so that that they could survive. If not, he could have wiped that whole population out. But he had mercy. Now we come up to today's lesson. And I'm going to start reading at 10 and verse 21. And the Lord said unto Moses, stretch out thine hand toward heaven, and there may be darkness over the land of Egypt, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward heaven, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They saw not one another, neither rose any from his place for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in their dwellings. All the plagues before, Moses went to Pharaoh and told him what was going to happen if he didn't let his people go. Pharaoh had a choice, and the plagues came. This time there was no warning. Darkness came, but Pharaoh knew where it was coming from. So, you have a plague with no warning. So if Moses would have gave him a warning, what do you think they would have done? They'd have made provisions for some kind of a light.
Right.
When AEP called and said, we're going to shut the power off, what are all you women do? Go get your candles. Go get your flashlight. Go do something so that you'll be prepared to be able to navigate your way. Here you had total darkness. If you've ever been in total darkness, you know, coal miners would know what I'm trying to describe. And if you're in the woods on not a full moon night, but you can't see nothing. You can't see the hand in front of your face. And when you can't see nothing, you have nothing to rely upon. That darkness, especially like in the coal mines, you go into a coal mines and you break open that one door, and that air just hits you. And once you get into that next section and close the door, if that coal mines has any water to it or something, you feel it. You can feel the moisture. You can't see it. And a lot of times when you bring your hand close to you, just the whiff of your hand, the breeze of your hand, you could feel the darkness. Me and my buddy of mine, we'd go up in Pocahontas County, we'd hunt. And we'd have to walk railroad tracks. And then cross over into Old Town and up the hill. There have been nights, if there was a full moon, you wouldn't even need your flashlight. I mean, you could see that good. I mean, even going up the hill, and it was amazing how you didn't need a light at all, and you could see everything. But there'd be that morning when it was dark, and there was this horse on the side of the railroad tracks. And it was all right when you could see it. You knew that horse was there, but buddy, when you was in total darkness, you kept looking. Is that horse? You didn't know. Is that horse? You see something move. And there would be like the railroad tracks would have that concrete post, and it'd be white, painted white. You knew what it was, but boy, I said, it scared you. Because you know your mind starts playing tricks on you. Your mind starts to wander. And you start looking for that. It was so dark. And you're thinking, is that horse going to move? That horse never would. It just staying there. You'd have to be almost right up on it, and you could hear it. And okay, that's that horse, you know. But can you imagine the mindset that the Egyptians had when this darkness came? Especially in the palace that the Pharaoh lived. I mean, I imagine that he lived in a big palace, and it got dark. You had no light. I can imagine people stumbling around trying to find themselves. I can imagine a mother and their child. Child might be in 4 different rooms around, but the time it would take for that child or that mother to get to their kid. Or you might be on one side of town and you had to get to the other side to get home. Can you imagine how, if you couldn't see the hand in front of you, how long it would take you to get there? Sometimes we find ourselves as Christians, we're in the dark. Sinners know what I'm talking about because you're in the dark. Sometimes you look at these plagues and you find yourself and you're thinking, as a sinner, what gods are you put before the one God? And he's been trying to tap you and send some kind of, I'm not saying he's sending plagues on you, but some kind of warning, some kind, to try to recognize what's in front of you. Because as he starts working with you and trying to take away whatever you're putting before him, and that's in Christians ourselves. A lot of times we put other gods before him. Whether it might be Baal, whether it might be work, whether it might be something else, that anytime it deters you from going to church or spending time with him in the Word, you're putting something in front of him. Then he may stir you up and try to show you what other God you're putting before him. And you get separated. As a sinner, as you look, you get to this plague and you're in darkness. God has already showed you things. He's maybe tried. I don't say that he's a God that tries to, you don't put nothing bad before you, but there's things in your life that keeps happening, but you don't have nothing to lean to. You have no hope. The Egyptians, they went to their gods. They tried to go to their gods and pray, but there was no hope. Here we have darkness. God was like peeling it like an onion, just kept peeling everything they had away. But the two most important gods that they had was the sun god and the moon god. Because that was probably the two biggest things a person, that you could worship was the sun and the moon. Because that was your light during the day and that was your light at night. And God took it all away, both day and night. There was he single-handedly took all hope. These people, their food, their housing, their health, and now all their gods that they prayed to, even to the most important, he took it away. Not only did he want them to send his people out, but he's shown them at the same time that my people, the people of Israel's God, is the only God that there is on this earth. That he single-handedly took all of that away. Because I couldn't, you imagine if you were an Egyptian, here you are down and out. All the gods that you had hope in is gone. They had nothing. But they had a respect and a fear that the Israelites' God was more. That there's something a lot more than what we ever served. Because this is when Moses spoke, things happened. When God told Moses to take it away, it was taken away. He was showing that no matter what, that he was the God of the earth, over the earth, the water, animals, and the sky. That he had control of all. It says, and Pharaoh called unto Moses and said, go ye serve the Lord. Only let your flocks and your herds be stayed. Let your little ones also go with you. And Moses said, thou must give us also sacrifices and burnt offerings, that ye may sacrifice unto the Lord our God. Well, here's Pharaoh trying to bargain with him now. He said, he's about ready. I want to get rid of this. But he said, keep the flock. Pharaoh knew everything he had was just about destroyed, as far as he's trying to not only rule his people, but he's trying to provide an economic. He's looking at it in economics. He needed these animals for food and for clothing and for whatever they can make. He was looking at it as an economic standpoint. Moses was looking at it for a religious standpoint. He needed to make sacrifices to God because he knew that once he crossed over, that he needed to make a sacrifice to God, but he wasn't instructed yet on how much he needed. So he was going to take it all because that's what God wanted. So Moses was sort of getting the issue of the bargaining was starting to go toward Moses now. Moses had the leverage of bargaining. He said, our cattle also shall go with us. There shall not an hoof be left behind. For therefore must we take to serve the Lord our God, and we know not with what we must serve the Lord until we come hither. It's what I just said. He said, we don't know how much we need, so we're going to take it all. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he would not let them go. Here we are, what Ronnie spoke of last week. Pharaoh's heart was hardened again. He was getting upset. He wanted to get rid of them, but he knew he would be a failure as a Pharaoh because he's letting his slaves dictate what he done, how he would do it, and what they would take. He would be a failure as a Pharaoh and all the Pharaohs before him. And he knew that. He thought, if I let these people go, take whatever they want, I wouldn't be a Pharaoh, I'd be a failure. I'd let somebody come in here and say, because they said their God wanted them, his slaves out, that they would be taken out. He would lose he would lose his power as being a Pharaoh.
Yep.
And then he'd probably have sort of an anarchy with his people, because here they are being stuck with nothing. And Pharaoh said unto him, get thee from me, take heed to thyself, see my face no more. For in that day thou seest my face, thou shalt die. And Moses said, thou hast spoken well. I will see thy face again no more. So Pharaoh was upset. And it's sort of like ironic, here they were for 3 days, they're in the dark, and he said, see my face no more. And Moses said, don't worry, you won't. But Moses knew before. If you go back in, I think, chapter 7, God told Moses that he raised up this Pharaoh to show what he was going to do. Like he was using Pharaoh as an example, and he said that's what I raised him up to do. And he told Moses that he wouldn't let his children go until the firstborn died. So Moses knew that Pharaoh wasn't going to let his people go until the next plague, the firstborn. But I ask you today, we look at ourselves and we go through life and we're looking. We don't want to put ourselves in the dark. We don't want to be like the Egyptian people. We don't want circumstances of life to take everything we have and you're sitting there in the dark. Because you have no hope. God was putting the people, the Egyptian people, in a situation where they was desperate. He was not only trying to deliver his people, but he said that he was making this to where everybody would know God's name. He was making an example out of it. He was showing them that without me, you're nothing. That he had all power. As a Christian or a sinner, he still has that same power over us.
Sure does.
He tried and tried to prick Pharaoh's heart. In the past, we've seen Pharaoh even say, I have sinned. I'm wicked. But he was doing it he was only doing it so he could get the plague lifted off. Sometimes how many times have we seen people give their heart to God when there's a battle on them? When they're in trouble. Oh, I'll do anything for you. How many times as Christians when we say to ourselves, when we get into people, it's not just sinners, but it's us too. How many times when we find ourselves in a position that we didn't put God first and we're starting to be slack, and all of a sudden the wolf's at your door and now you cry, have mercy on me. Take this cup away from me. Don't free me. And then once it's gone, you're back to what you're doing before. It's no different from Pharaoh. Pharaoh's stakes was a lot higher, but you've got to look at the same situation as you are. As Christians, we do the same thing. The thing that was different with the Egyptian people and you still have hope. You still have God, because God won't turn his back on you.
Praise the Lord.
He's there and just to forgive us for anything. But he wants our praise. He would probably like to have had the Egyptian people have a revival in that land and worship him. It could have happened. It very well. Pharaoh could have got saved and the history would have rewrote itself. If you look at the Egypt had the resources to be the powerhouse. They never were. God took that power away from them. Even today, Egypt will help somebody, but they're not the powerhouse. But in ancient Egypt, they were it. They had the resources. They had the Nile. They had everything that you could ask for. And God slowly took each and every one of them because of his people. For 400 years. And it's not like they didn't know God. Because Israel was there for 400 years. And you can't tell me that the Egyptian people didn't hear Yahweh's name. They knew of Israel's God. They knew what Israel, who they worshipped and who he was. And when they started seeing their people, their gods, have no power, and Yahweh have every power, that had to be a rude awakening for them. Here as an Egyptian, as Pharaoh and the people, they lost their gods, half of their crop, their health, because of the Israel's people. He wouldn't let them go. It was one man, even the people his advisors, think, oh, we can't take much more. Jesus stands at the door and he's knocking. If you find yourself in the dark, no hope, there is hope. And he's there to help you with whatever problem that you have. Get rid of your gods that you've set before him. Focus on him. And get your exodus away from that. Because that's what he wants. Next week's lesson we'll get the next play. But I urge you that don't be like the Egyptian people. Don't be like Pharaoh. Don't let your heart get hardened. Because even in Christians, don't think because I'm saved, my heart won't get hardened. Yes, it will. The devil will put stuff, just like Job, he'll put stuff on you to where you'll want to blame God. You'll think God's doing all the bad, trying to, for whatever reason, punish me for that. He's not like that. He's there to help you. He's there to save you. He's there for you to lean on. And He asks, if you're a sinner, give yourself to Him. Don't be in the dark. Don't feel that darkness. You'll find yourself, like the Bible says, it was so dark that they could feel it. As people, I know, people that gets in a depression state, in their mind, it's dark. It's so dark that they can feel it. But I urge you that there's one that can turn the light on for you. Because He is the light. Where it's so dark, where you can feel it, that one little light can make a world difference.